There was a time when the word anarchist meant someone who is more extreme or revolutionary than the government they're opposing, like the anarchist divisions that fought in the Spanish Civil War. No one imagined there would be office holders or statists who are more extreme than some anarchists. For someone who wants to be doing cavalier things in an otherwise stable society, what good does it do to be living in a den of thieves, where the government is more unstable than you are? Take, for example, the respected anarcho-punk songwriter Pat the Bunny, who hung up his guitar to be a programmer. In our democracy, people like him are supposed to be cavalier buckers of convention, not bastions of traditional songwriting at a time when AI has entered the music industry. Do you remember the scene in the movie Robin Hood where Robin is showing Maid Marian their plunder, and when she thinks he's bragging because he's a pirate, he asks his men, "Shall we divide this among ourselves?" And their response, "Save it for Richard. It belongs to the king." No one imagined we might need an anarchist to bring us back to how things were in the time of our grandparents. For example, when it was considered so shocking that a president would lie, it got him removed from office, instead of a voter saying, "All politicians lie," or "I didn't choose him for being a saint." Or when a president having an affair is an impeachable offense, at a time when the economy is booming. Or when the offense is one party stealing another party's playbook, something that seems silly to us now because it's no longer necessary to do that. The relationship between anarchism and statism seems like a fairy tale to us now. Revolutionaries did what you'd expect them to do. The state cracked down on them like one would expect them to. But while we were being raised to think of anarchism as extreme, or not think about it at all, someone in every walk of life was saying, "Why are you wearing those socks? Are you a dissident?" Just because they can. My friend, Dr. Justin Sledge of the channel Esoterica, has posted that his college professor was muscled out of his job despite a lifetime of loyal service. So if anarchism is extreme, does that mean you want society to be even more restrictive? The opposite of anarchism is statism. The opposite of libertarianism is authoritarianism. And the opposite of revolution is mediocrity. If you stamp out all of those things, what you get is punishment without revolution, loyal subscribers being steamrolled without just cause. So what if someone says, "If I was an anarchist, I'd lose my job," or "I'd get kicked out of school"? Let's say you work for the county maintenance department, where the biggest rat stays the longest, someone who chews out other people because they've traded in their morals for job security. Where there is no ladder, the county would never approach an employee with an offer of benefits, so you just have to stay healthy as long as you can. And let's say your housing depends on your job too. The job incentive is survival. The incentive to do any little thing is survival. My friend, the county electrician, knows that an entire public building was wired the wrong way, and he's at the end of this cycle after 20 years. So what about the private sector? Here are two companies that will remain nameless. One is the #1 tax company in the US, which has decided they no longer need receptionists. And the other is the #1 membership store, where my friend and his coworkers were laid off over the holidays, even though he has a college degree. At the Supercenter, I just saw two altercations going on at the same time. A Subway employee telling customers they have no bread, and the bank next door telling everyone they don't have the keys. Each employer is going to be even more unreasonable next year, and the problems are not to be discussed. Another thing that stands in the way is you can't help young people, even though the formative years are what makes a terrorist or a bastard or makes them suicidal. Jesus said, "If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones, it would be better if a great millstone was fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depths of the sea." Have you ever tried to assist a child who is being abused? It puts them in double jeopardy. Even if you went back in time and tried to rescue anyone you know from their parents, it would only drive them mad and make national headlines. Any child. Our system protects only negative influence. The positives come solely from an adult's own volition, and adults are inept. Take just one dispassionate fact. Homeschooling keeps students safer than the fortress method of education. Is it a better system? Not necessarily. It just saves lives without guards, gatehouses, or metal detectors. Last week, a student was hit riding a bicycle in front of an elementary school. A group of parents were questioned like they always are, and they said, "I can't believe it's not safe for our children," like they always do. I'm older than they are, and school was a tragedy for me. Like the bird that says its own name, as long as neighborhoods exist, we will hear,
"I'm trusting that my child is safe in your hands."
It's scary because it's right in front of the elementary school, and there's so many parents that drop their children off.
Parents from all over North Carolina are sending their children to go to school with the expectation that the city of Morganton is going to protect and keep their kids safe.
Because you are an animal. This is why there's a need for moral antagonism. So the advice I'm about to give is solely in the context of altruism and the procurement of facts, not anarchy for any other purpose. The tenets of anarchism are: don't trust authority, the way forward is to sabotage establishment, people are born with wisdom that lessens as they get older, and there's a place for an anarchist in our democracy because establishments are indestructible. So the first step in any situation is to ask yourself, what aspects are under your control? Knowing this is for your own good, whether you act on it or not. Knowing where things stand on the scale between individualism and autocracy, and where you would like to be. For example, when I was young, kids would disappear into the woods for hours at a time, unsupervised. At that time, things were here, and now they're here. At that time, a lot of jobs had one weird employee who was free to be themselves. Compare this to an employer where anything outside the company's current field of vision is not discussed, including their own past and the measures they took. So examples of what aspects are under your control are a soldier during wartime who helps save the lives of civilians, an office manager who helps an employee who can't pay their bills or needs a place to stay, or a teacher who lets a failing student slide, giving them a passing grade because of their conscience. I have a friend, a middle school teacher, who is always depressed because he's stuck between the walls of mediocrity, even though I remember teachers being the bad guys. So in his case, what aspects are under your control might be contact with parents, or a student project that gives you a glimpse of the other side of a student's life that a teacher never sees. The teacher in the movie To Sir with Love is just a fill-in, but he comes up with projects to teach life lessons that reveal to him some of the reasons why students are the way they are. This follows the rule, always have more than one reason for doing something. Your underlying motivation, and the thing that gives you license to do it. A student questionnaire can appear harmless or cut right to the information you want by being official in some way. You can get permission to participate in a national study. This can reveal very simple information about where someone is coming from. For example, if a student is in double jeopardy, there's dysfunction in school and at home, all they might need is a safe place to go. I wasn't in a position to outwit my parents and teachers, or even understand them. I simply avoided them so there wouldn't be a confrontation. This is the same way the school board needs to be dealt with. You don't confront them directly. Something needs to prevent them from making decisions. This answer will be misconstrued because of people like anarchist Luigi Lucchini, who assassinated Kaiser Elizabeth, a man who's been immortalized in fiction for being condemned to hell, where he's questioned by a judge for eternity. It's not disgruntledness that makes something wrong, which is why it's important to know who to trust. In any situation, it's essential for you to know who it's safe to share your thoughts with, building a separate infrastructure than the one your employer uses. And if you can do that, you can accomplish things that only a parent and teacher can do together, or even a teacher and student can do together. More on this later. One of the things that's declined in the workplace is free information. My neighborhood's HOA, Housing Authority, was replaced by another HOA that's so bad our housing manager retired, but all the residents still have her on speed dial because now that she's no longer with the company, she's free to take our side and give information that comes from an unknown corner. Whoever engages with you on the subject you want to discuss is your friend. Whoever is incapable has failed a very simple test, dividing the workplace, school, or neighborhood into a new order: people who want you to succeed and give you facts, and people who are hazardous to your health. Step 4. Your strengths are not where people expect them to be. Imagine you're playing a video game where you're a ship commander who has moved your reactor from the engineering section to the kitchen. In the real world, this applies to timing. Let's say you've inherited a shopping center where there's a business you'd like to get hit by a meteor, and you're threatening litigation. If they're negotiating for you to renew their contract in 3 days, here is where they think the problem is. Here is where you're really going to make the changes that will come back to help people for years to come. When choosing your battles and safeguards, it's necessary in any profession to have a canard, something you keep around for no reason except that it's a bastard detection system. For example, anyone who is an outdoorsman knows you can never be sure about certain properties. So I grabbed some branches and made a brush pile just to find out if I was being watched. Every employer, institution, school, or landlord you will ever meet has advantages over you. So you keep something for emergencies that is a baffler and nothing else. If you're President of the United States and Congress is coming after you for cutting the wheels off of public education, call a meeting to discuss education and aliens. Have a junior staff bring it up unexpectedly, and now the whole meeting will have to be classified. Your enemies won't know what hit them. It doesn't even matter if the canard is real or not. The self-made enforcer is a kind of person that can be easily stymied, baited, and driven mad by the unknown. Essentially, you are prepared to head off a potential threat, not yet knowing what it is. When an antagonist comes after you for whatever reason, you will have made certain measures having never premeditated the subject they're talking about. The roadblocks delaying their efforts have to fall into place by coincidence. Let's say on a given day, the computer system is down for repairs, and you've been instructed to pass it on. When the office snitch calls you in and says they're going to terminate your order for natural fabric instead of artificial, you can say, "No, you won't," and they will not comprehend how you were able to stay ahead of them. So if you are a project manager coming into a position of responsibility, a business that has become so cutthroat your department hasn't made the short list in 30 years, or your restaurant hasn't had a 5-star rating in 15 years, or your town hasn't had a festival in 10 years. The typical executive is a louse who hides under a veneer of civility, and you need to do the opposite. Keep yourself squeaky clean while maintaining an air of suspicion to draw out and identify people who are judgmental or downright unhealthy to be around. Find out as much as you can during the interim, that brief time when you're not yet appointed, but people will do nice things for you because you're stepping into office, is a more valuable time than the job itself. Go out for drinks with your predecessor. Now that they're leaving, they might be free to tell you all the things you were wondering about when they were in charge. Once you know who you can trust, call an informal meeting, let's say over the holidays if a new administration is coming with the new year, where you ask, what could we do to break the stalemate? Well, what's the craziest idea you could possibly try? And choose your own scandal. Something that will crawl straight up the spine of the person who hears it, despite there being no truth to it. Months later, when the office snitch raises their head and says, "What's this rumor about us giving out free internet?" You say, "Oh, someone overheard me at an informal dinner." Maybe the seasonal intern who passed it on had some personal issues and is no longer with us. So you have a two-pronged attack to reach your goal. The company's self-made enforcer is being frivolous with such wild accusations and needs to face consequences for it. As far as the staff is concerned, your orders were to follow last year's playbook to the letter, contending this vicious rumor, saying they've never heard such a thing in any context. After putting these fears to rest, you sit down with the enforcer, bringing a book called A World Without Paid Internet, and open it up to make her think all kinds of things. When asked about this, make sure you unsealed the book in front of her to show you don't know the first thing about such lies. To successfully ward things off, you don't just have to foresee these contingencies, but every contingency. Just as it helps to have some kind of dirt on the person who's a threat, you can even protect your efforts by starting your own investigation first. I'm sorry to say there's been some kind of mischief at several employers I've had. Not always, but if you're the one who discovered it, keep it between yourself, your superiors, and law enforcement, and ask them if you can keep your eyes open in case this person strikes again. The red flags you're looking for are obsessive behavior toward a certain file or responsibility, someone insisting they take care of it by themselves or that it has to be them. Office antagonists are often unable to resist going after something that seems odd or suspicious. They choose their battles frivolously, so choose the right time when their intention is to come after you, and reveal they have stumbled into an investigation into wrongdoing, and you'd like to ask them a few questions. Not every situation is going to be as extreme as these. My outdoor job has multiple facets. The job I get paid to do is maintenance, security, customer service, emergency responder. The quirky thing that works to my advantage is environmentalism. Not because it's not serious, it's just that nobody else knows anything about it. If you're a tattoo artist who owns your own business, the art that you live for greatly outweighs the job. If you're a construction worker, not so much. In any field where you are disgruntled or being disadvantaged, let's say academics, you need to collaborate, join, or contribute to people of like minds. Here is my advice on how to begin these discussions. There has to be a private, non-disclosed membership and subscription where contributors will feel safe and the institution will never know exists, and a separate public disclosure and information mission. The first goal should be to identify people who are interested and document their stories, fields of study, and institutions to build an information pool of names and resources. The founding members need to decide what kind of vetting is needed, what membership entails, and what the goals of your organization will be. One goal you can achieve with just 2 people is scratching each other's backs. Do you remember the movie Finding Forrester, where Jamal Wallace is an athlete who blew the big game? No one expects him to be a scholar until the school's celebrity laureate comes back and they're like, "You guys are friends?" Breaking the social barrier. I'm sure some anarchists would say I'm not a real anarchist, but the position of the school and our society is, if he was a scholar, he'd make it on his own merits. Here's an article called "Cliques in the Workplace: The Silent Disruptors of Company Culture." You can't be a loyalist and also an ambassador of facts, as if the person with the most facts wins. Let's say an article is against workplace relationships, but the franchise was started by a married couple. An employer stands on the notion that they earned the right to do something, which means a faction within that employer can also earn it. It's unsustainable. What are you going to do without facts? The author says that cliques hamper professional growth. So what if an employer is unreasonable? A loyalist would say, you have to find a solution within established channels. Would you take any BS if you were getting your car fixed? You have to know something to speak strictly about it. Supercenters these days have changed from a place where people were welcome 24 hours a day to a place where measures against thievery are constantly in your face. All businesses take measures against corruption, but what is your definition of corruption? It's only corruption when it doesn't profit the company. So what kind of example does this set for the individual? There are all manner of discussions this can lead to. Is anarchism inherently dangerous? In which case, is statism less dangerous? I'm interested in your thoughts. Thanks for watching.